Where am I? Hi. Here we are, Solutio, on Tuesday, the 28th of July. Where's my music? Here it is. And the websites are shadowtechalchemy.com, solutiopodcast.com, solutioalchemy.com, melissamarimovie.com, melissamarimusic.com, all of those. And so today, we're called the shamanic artist. That's what we're called, or it could be the sacred artist, or the sacred artist and the archetype of the shaman, or things like that. And I like I said last time, I'm not just going to improvise. I'm gonna work off some notes and deliver something that's grounded in some thought and study and research. And this is coming out of a paper that I'm working on right now. It's not going to be that long, but a lot of these papers that I've been writing lately are there. What they're doing is they're helping me to crystallize the material that came out of my relationship with Melissa. Which reminds me to mention, what you just saw there and heard with the music. That was all, that was me and Melissa. That was our band, the '01 Experience. That song right there, Prima Materia, is so powerful. That's a demo version. We played it live, but we never recorded that song professionally. So that's just the demo version. I got to go back into it, turn the vocals up, retrack some stuff, put some real drums, hire somebody, probably Carter, the original drummer. It's going to be a big old project to do that. So that's why I haven't done that, because I want to have Carter in there. But so that's what we're doing. So one of the ways that Melissa and I were channeling this material was through that band and through the books and through all the stuff that we did. But that was kind of her preferred method. And of course, I'm a musician, and so I can do that, music producer and all that, so I can do that. And but there was just so much material, the whole body of work that came out of us, that kind of came through Melissa and then into me. She was sort of the spiritual source of it, even though it was a lot of the stuff we developed some of it was already gestating in me, but the real formal direction of what we were doing together, the alchemy, so to speak, relational alchemy, the shadow work, all of this, it at first in the relationship, it was like, because I'm a talker and I've got the logos energy, the masculine energy, and so I could kind of go wherever. But it all kind of came back to these certain places, these certain grooves that were in Melissa's psyche, and they were her implicit philosophy of life. And so after a while, I recognized, what was going on. And so my job was basically to kind of pull this stuff out of Melissa and then to explain it, to clean it up, to make it clear, to demystify it to some degree, and put it into writing, put it into speaking, put it into drawing, put it into art, put it into things. And she had the art part down. She already knew how to put it into art. She knew how to put it into music, how to put it into performance. And I figured out how to put it into more concrete terms. And so what kind of manifested was what was in that book, Shadow Tech. And that book is kind of like, it has a theme, which is, understand the shadow side of reality. That is the main theme. Understand it metaphysically, understand it in this personal psyche, understand it in the culture, understand it inside Melissa, because there's an interview with Melissa in the back of that book that goes into her personal, shadow initiations, underworld trips. And so it's that's the basic subject. It's all about the shadow and understanding the shadow. But the particular modes, the particular modules, principles, maxims, things like that were in there were particular to us and what we were doing, our particular life art, so to speak. Melissa and I were together 12 years. And so in that time, I was able to see, I had enough time to kind of see, what's going to keep coming out, what's coming out, what's coming back, what do we keep coming back to? And it's so interesting because it's like everything that came out of the whole 12 years was kind of just an increasing development of what came out in the first 2 years. It only took 2 years for basically everything in its basic form to come forth out of our interactions, out of our conversations, out of our jams, out of our relationship and our study and everything together. And then it was about understanding what came through and putting it into forms. And so now here I am. It's been 18 months since Melissa passed. And here I am, and it's like I have probably a lifetime, if I wanted to keep digging into all that material, all that core material, and keep refining it and turning it into art, turning it into philosophical ideas, incorporating it into my life more and more and more, and just constantly working with it, integrating it, refining it. It's the gold. And so that's what I'm doing with these papers that I've been writing. I'm like, okay, this needs to be said. Oh yeah, this needs to be said. Oh yeah, this needs to be worked through. And so I used to just save up all that stuff and put out a book. And now I'm just putting it in these papers, and I'll probably, make another book that, restates all of that and puts it into kind of into a larger format. But that's kind of what I've been doing. And this idea, and now I'm gonna share with you some of these ideas that Melissa and I worked with, and that some of which were really like these grooves I was saying that she really always had me return to, and that really rang true. Like, this is important. I always use the metaphor from that Close Encounters movie, that 1977 movie with Richard Dreyfuss, where they think he's going insane. His family thinks he's going insane, and he's got the mashed potatoes on his plate, and he's carving out with his fork Devil's Tower, and he's saying, this means something. This means something. And he's trying to figure out what is this image? What is this symbol that's coming to him? And Melissa and I, we were like that with a number of symbols, and we just kept turning them around. A lot of symbols, actually, a lot of ideas, a lot of archetypes. And we just kept turning them around. What does this mean? What does this mean? What does this mean? And so, although I think those ideas got worked through enough to where we could use them, they still were never completely worked through. So I'm still working through them. So what I started with was this idea of life art that Melissa used. This was her term, life art and life artist. And I was like, what does that mean to you? I want to understand this when you use the term life artist. And she would look at certain people and she'd say, he or she is a life artist. And I just accepted that. I was like, yeah, obviously they are. But then I started asking, like, well, okay, let's see if we can figure out what this is. What is a life artist compared to a regular artist? And we had to kind of, it was an intuitive thing. And we had to kind of go through it over and over and keep returning to it. And I remember a few years, several years into that, I remember thinking, maybe this is a spectrum. Maybe you have artistry on a spectrum, and the life artist is somewhere on the spectrum. And I remember actually going for one particular walk with her on Mount Wanda, which is kind of like our sacred space. And I remember really hammering down on this and getting her to work with me on this and going, okay, so is the life artist spiritual? Can they be spiritual? Do they have to be spiritual? And she's like, well, okay, what about this type of person? Is that a life artist? Is that? And we were like really going through it. And I remember kind of coming up with some kind of a spectrum where you have the spiritual life artist is on one end, and then you have just the regular artist, the most regular artist you can think of on the other end. And that's kind of how I kind of held it for a while. But then, in wanting to nail this stuff down and share it with people, I started, several weeks ago, really honing down on this again. And then I'm like, okay, well, where's the artist? Okay, first of all, what is the life artist, and are they spiritual, and what is the difference between them and the spiritual artist or the sacred artist? And then where is that in relation to the shaman archetype? Because, I mean, I know all about the shaman archetype, the shaman role, and the subdivisions of it. There's a document, there's an ebook by Andrew Camargo. I think it's called The Shamanic Archetype. And it's like 25 versions of the shamanic archetype, 25 different roles of different kinds of mystic or artist or healer, myth maker, different versions that are on this shaman line. And I pulled that back out and I'm like, okay. And of course I have Robert Moore's work and C. Michael Smith. So kind of just going back over that and trying to kind of figure out what is the relationship between the artist and the shaman? Is the artist a type of shaman, or which type of artist? And I was really trying to figure that out. And I was working with Claude AI to try to map it out on an axis. Never really was working. And so that's kind of how this has been being developed. So and then you have our term. So we had life artist, and then we had living in the movie. And we've done whole shows on living in the movie and how we came up with that and everything and what that all means. So living in the movie is a life art practice, and it is basically sort of the most mythic life art practice that you can think of. And I'm not saying it's the only one, but it's sort of archetypally up there, because it's the recognition, it's the ancient recognition that reality as we know it is not real, so to speak. It's not objectively real. And that that there is something projected about it. Or some ancient people thought of it like as you could think of yourself in a dream, lucid in a dream. and that reality seems to be some kind of lucid dreaming activity because of the kinds of feedback that occur, and because of the way that one's own consciousness can generate feedback from external reality, and especially in certain states. But there is something malleable about it, and of course the way everybody has their own version of reality. They have their own screen, their own theater, so to speak, of reality. And this is ancient, and this is Plato's allegory of the cave, and this is now the simulation theory and all of this. And Melissa and I, we use the movie metaphor, right? And so we've talked about this a lot. And most people are movie goers, and they're just stuck to the screen, and they don't realize that what's on the screen is coming through a projector and coming through film. And there's narrative and archetypal qualities to the story and all of that. It's just taken for granted that this is reality, and it is what it is, and I just roll with it. They're like moviegoers just sitting in the screen in the theater, just accepting what is. But the co-director, we called it, is the person who stands up in the theater and says, how is this made? And turns around and sees that it's coming from the projector room, and that there's a whole system that's projecting the movie. And they go up in the projector room, they see the projector, they see the film going through it, they see the prism, they see the whole apparatus. Well, the projector and the film is an analog, an analogy of the body and the mind, the psyche. So everything that you're perceiving out there is an objective sort of knock on wood quality to reality. Absolutely. But there is a subjective, personal, psychically created overlay onto all of reality. Yes, there is a tree out there. Yes, there is a table. There is an objective reality that the human body is interfacing with. But on top of that is all the subjectivity. It's all of your own meaning making and your own perception. I mean, not even to mention all the ways in which we the eyes work, the ears work, and all of that, so that what we're taking in is really a curated reality. And then when you put the psychological on top of it, the meaning that we make, like what we think that person across the street is thinking about us, or how we interpret that person's facial expression, or what is the meaning of the fact that that person has a new dog, or that they just got married, or that you got fired from your job, or that you're not feeling well right now, that you're tired, you have a stomach ache, right? Whatever it is, we apply bias, we apply meaning, subjective framing onto everything that's happening to us and happening through us and that we observe. And all that is movie. That's all movie. And so when you wake up to that, you realize that's the movie. And you stop being so reactive to people and events, and you start looking at things that are happening as though they're happening in a movie. And you are a film student, and you are studying how movies are made, and you're especially studying the kinds of symbolism, archetypal symbolism that great films have included in them or have built into them. Then you're looking at the world, you're looking at your life, and you're saying, what does this mean? What is the deeper meaning of this? And you're able to interpret the archetypal, mythological qualities of your movie of life. You're in a myth, you're in a movie. What does it mean? What type of movie are you in? What type of hero are you? What type of mission are you on? What does this particular thing mean? And in our system, which is very close to the Jungian system, we're looking at synchronicities. We're looking at epiphanies, downloads, dream images. And we're saying, what does this mean? And we're like I've been saying lately, we're following the breadcrumbs and drawing a connection between the breadcrumbs. The breadcrumbs are the downloads, the synchronicities, the epiphanies. And each of those is a little download. Is a little breadcrumb. And we're tying together these breadcrumbs and mapping them out on the map of story. Where is this in my story? What is the meaning of this input in my story? What is the meaning of this person and what they're doing or what they're doing to me in my story? What kind of story is this? So that is living in the movie. And that is a mystic, it's shamanic, it's mystic way of living life. It is a form of spiritual life art in Melissa's understanding. So we had this came to us. That came to us probably in 2014, probably about a year into it. And through synchronicities and just our whole relationship in life together was incredibly numinous and incredibly creative and prolific. And this was just, coming through us. And then we developed it. And so I'm looking at this now and I'm saying, well, where does this fit into the greater picture? Where does our particular type of mystic life art that we call living in the movie, where does that fit in with other types of mystic life art? Where does that fit in with mysticism, with shamanism, with spirituality, with spiritual practice, with Jungian practice? Where does this all fit in? I want to see a zoomed out view of all this. So that's I'm kind of giving you the backstory here of kind of the thought process and what's behind my latest interest in wanting to map this out in this new paper and this stuff that I'm working on. So now, with that in mind, I can give you some definitions and then I can kind of take you through some of this material. And what's before I kind of tell you that, what's dawning on me, because I've been telling you that I've been going down to this Casa de Luz village in Austin, where there's all these spiritual people. It's a very, very special place out here that I found that it's just like is tucked away. And I didn't find it until several months ago. And there's a community of people, a lot of them younger than me, who are all on spiritual paths and stuff. And I'm looking at this situation with these folks, and I'm listening to their conversations and their interests. And I'm going, and I'm saying, well, that was me. 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 I've been in all these places that these folks are in, or in some version of them. Different kinds of impasses in life and having to manage the matrix world with their spiritual practice and their their artistic way of being and sensibilities. And it's, you know, it's very clear to me that the kind of experience that I have just in the 20 years that I've been working on myself and on the alchemical path, so to speak, and then the 12 years with Melissa, it's like, I'm like, okay, oh, I see what's going on here. Okay, I can create maps of this territory. I can create maps of the territory of the modern mystic, the modern shaman, the modern visionary artist, healer, all these different types of functions. I can kind of see it from a zoomed out place because I've just been on it for long enough and wanting to map it out and understand it. And most people can't see that. And then the people who do understand something about shamanism and mysticism and stuff, it's usually framed as a kind of an ancient modality. Alchemists, it's an ancient thing, or the initiates of the Eleusinian mysteries, or indigenous shamanism, or the, you know, aboriginals in their dream time, and all of these different varieties. Well, how does that pertain to people who are on this kind of path today? They didn't just go away. And then how are they coping with the modern materialistic world that has no recognition of these roles? Even the artist, just the basic artist, not even the visionary artist, can't really get any respect in the modern West, especially America. More so in Europe, but less here. And it's like, so of course you're going to have all these people who are lost. What are we doing here? What is this place? Why do I have to work some stupid job that I just to get these stupid pieces of paper? I mean, what is this dumb game? Everybody's running around like, you know, playing this stupid Monopoly game. And those of us who are on this kind of path, we're like, why do we have to bother with this? Hello? Can we just it's like we're being held back. We're ready to go to college and we're being held back in 6th or 7th grade. Why? And then we go look around and say, well, where are the other people that are at our level? And what? They're not. There's nobody around. So, I mean, this is what I've been asking for decades, and Melissa was too. And we finally kind of figured out that this role, this shamanic role, this shamanic archetype is always in humanity, but it's always underground. And there's different periods where it ebbs and flows and all of that. And we actually saw a big wave of this in the modern world in the 1960s, 60s and 70s. So we saw all these sacred artists and people who were in the human potential movement and experimenting with psychedelics and isolation tanks and the human potential movement and all this stuff. So we saw that bump, and that's where these people showed up. But then the modern secularized, flatland, spiritual, materialistic flatland kind of just sucked them back in. And so now here we are again. These things, these cultural waves, they happen, over decades time and all of that, and centuries and all of that. So now we're like, probably another wave is starting to climb, starting to build. And so Melissa and I were late from the 60s, 70s wave. We weren't old enough to have enough experience and practice to be able to do something with this in the 70s. We were both alive in the 70s. She was a little older than me, but I was a child. Melissa was a teenager. And And so, you know, we couldn't even really do anything with this until the, 2000, when we started our thing, like 2013. So now where's the culture? Where's the need for this understanding? Well, it looks like it's starting to come in. So now I'm like, okay, I'm out of the period, that period with that phase of life where Melissa was in there with me, that's now past. And now it's like, okay, what's the next phase? So now I'm like, okay, I have to take what I learned and I have to share this with people. That's what this show is about. And yes, it's an esoteric thing now, but it'll build. Someone's got to do it. And I'm not the only one, but I'm doing it in my own way, and I have my own particular experience. And then having this very shamanic, alchemical relationship with a woman, and really developing through relationship and doing shadow work and all this through relationship is not that common at all. It's just not common. I was talking to my friend Stephanie about this. She had a alchemical relationship, so to speak. And she knows no one else other than me and Melissa who had this. Actually, that's not true. Sorry. She was connected to the twin flame community. But the twin flame community is like a different variety of this. And they're less conscious of what's going on. This is closer to like a Jungian type of a thing, but most Jungians are not really doing it in relationship. The relationship isn't the alchemical vessel that it could be. So anyway, that's some background there. And so look here. So now, let me give you some definitions. The shaman is a compound, high-capacity community technician of mind, body, and culture. The shaman is a compound role, and I'm gonna load that up with the different sub roles, the different capacities that go into that. But I'm just going to give you some basic definitions here. The artist is a technician of culture mind, narrower in function than the shaman, but wider in reach by reason of the medium, which is transmissible culture, in many varieties and of varying depth and breadth. So the artist is shaman are artists as well as healers and initiators and myth makers and these other functions. Shaman use artistry, but that's not all they do. The artist is a technician, I'm saying, of the culture mind. That's a term I've long used. Basically because the mind and the culture are one interlocking ecosystem, one field. And the artist I have a definition here for you actually that is, let's see if I can find it in here, that it's so the artist is engaged in symbolic communication and psychic catharsis. So the artist is communicating through whatever medium, through painting, through drawing, through poetry, through song, whatever medium, all the mediums of art, movie, story, fiction, whatever. And this is a form of symbolic communication, right? So it's a mode of generating, cycling, and recycling culture, right? taking culture, putting it into the psyche, pulling it back up, and renewing the culture mind, right? And also mirroring, showing the viewer themselves, right? And so, which I got to write down actually, and mirroring. So, and then the artist is also engaged in psychic catharsis. It's for their own use as well, pulling up unconscious material and getting it up and integrating it into the ego and getting it out through behavior and moving it through the psyche and body. So it's got a physical cathartic effect, but it's more ancient and archetypal function is that of a transceiver of culture. So that's the artist. Now, the artist can do that in a way that's not sacred. And all of the functions of the shaman can be engaged in by technicians who are doing it without access to the sacred, without spiritual depth. And I'm going to get into that. But so that's the artist. That's what they're doing. The life artist is an artist who engages in life itself as a work of art. Okay? The life artist is an artist who engages in life itself as a work of art. Especially when you recognize that your life is a movie, it's all a movie, it's malleable to a degree, and you can certainly, you can certainly form it to your own aesthetic tastes. You can make art out of your life. And there are people that, we've probably all met them, and you meet them and you're like, oh, this is your house? Oh, this is your job? Oh, this is your wardrobe? Oh, this is your attitude? Oh, wow. Everything is art. Everything you do is art. It's all art. You've artified everything. You've artified your whole life. We've met people like that. Some of us are like that to some degree. So, that's the life artist. Now, the life artist may not be a sacred life artist. I'm going to get into this in a minute, but that's what they're doing. That's the life artist. Actually, it's right here. The sacred artist is an artist whose work is fed by real contact with the sacred, who consciously aims to heal, enlighten, or transcend. They are closer to the shaman than the basic artist. The sacred artist has had some kind of initiation and some kind of connection to the transcendent, and is putting that gnosis into their art. Whether they're a sacred life artist or just a sacred artist, they're a painter or they're a songwriter or whatever it is. And all artists are doing this to some degree, because all human beings have had some connection to the sacred. All humans have had some connection to the shadow, to the transcendent, to the ancestral. Everyone has had those kinds of experiences, and they're in everyone's art. But some art is what I'm calling cover art, and that's more like they're influenced by other people who have gone really deep, other artists who have gone very deep. And they recognize deep art because everybody has that. Everybody's touched depth to some degree, but then they copy that, and then they put something out that looks like that sacred art. And this is what you see all the time in art culture. I mean, the most experience I have with art culture is in music, but you have the original artists who form a certain genre or a certain style, and those are sacred artists. And then everyone copies them, the cover artists. And that cover art could still be good too. I don't even know if that's the right word, because a cover song is something like that. You get the point. Working on the terms. But and then we have living in the movie. And living, and I explained it to you. Living in the movie is a contemporary mystic form of sacred life art. And I have a bookkeeping note in here that artist is a person and life art is a practice. Okay, that's not important. Yeah, so living in the movie is a contemporary mystic form of sacred life art. It's me and Melissa's particular form of sacred life art. So with those definitions now, I'm able to kind of see the topology of this. And then that's how I was able to start this paper. And so now I'm going to give you some deeper definitions of some of this. So like I said, the shaman is kind of the sort of larger umbrella. You actually have the shaman umbrella, and artist is inside there, and all the things that shaman do. And then you have artist as its own umbrella that shaman use art, but shamanism isn't just art. So they're two related holons. And so in order to kind of clarify this, I was like, okay, let me take Andrew Camargo's paper, the 25 different roles, shamanic roles. And me and Claude, the AI program, I said, okay, let's look at all these and let's see if we can boil them down to a smaller number of general roles. Let's see if we can find the basic ingredients of all these different shamanic forms, shamanic roles. And, he comes back with his answer, and I'm looking at that. I'm like, okay, I don't know about that, maybe. But I just kind of kept kind of working on it until I kind of felt comfortable with, like, okay, I think we've got something we can work with, because there's no need to actually nail this down to perfection. You can't do that anyway. But just to give a general idea. So the 7 reasons the shaman exists. So 1 is healing the body and mind. 2 is initiating people at life's great thresholds. Right? The initiator, the initiation master. 3 is revealing the hidden and reading signs. Right? So this is the intuitive powers. This is, and it goes on from just intuitive powers to even to what you would consider to be, parapsychological powers. Mediating with unseen powers. So in the ancient world, this is mediating with spirits. And in the current world, this is mediating with complexes. This is mediating with aspects of the psyche, parts, complexes, archetypes of the psyche, of the personal and interrelational and collective psyche. So this is basically psychology. Sacralizing the human world. Sacralizing, right? Through rite, through ritual, through ceremony, right? So that's a priest role. It's a shaman's role. Innovating, bringing in new ideas and things that a culture needs, right? Creating novelty, seeing where things are going, and being able to come up with an idea, a function, a structure of some kind that can help people where they're going, where they need to go. So they have, because they're outsiders and they can see, they have a meta perspective, metacognitive perspective, so that they can innovate. They're hole-on jumpers, Melissa called it. And a mythologizing function. This is the seventh function. Keeping the guiding story alive. Keeping the guiding story, the myth, right? Of a tribe, of a culture. And then I say in here, every human does each of these at least a little bit, but the shaman does them deeply and all together. So the shaman has all those roles all together. Art, though, is not in there because art is a medium through which you can do all of those things. You can do healing. You can do mediating. Can you do mediating? Not quite so much. Can you sacralize? Yes, you can. Can you innovate? Yes, you can. Can you mythologize? Obviously, you can. Can you heal? Yes, you can through art. So art is one of the mediums that shaman use, more than it is a reason for being. And so then I take, of course, I'm going to take integral theory. I'm going to take the 4 quadrants that I'm always using, right? Mind, body, culture, and society, or institutions. And so then what we're going to do is, I describe it as rooms here. So you have the inner room, the shaman's own psyche. That's the upper left-hand quadrant. That's the room of your personal psychology, your inner state. This is your personal shadow work. The shaman is doing personal shadow work, personal psychology on themselves. Then you have and relational with your partner, or anybody that's in your. And that's where it kind of bridges into the room of shared meaning, art, and symbol. The lower left-hand quadrant is the interrelational field and the field of culture and art and symbol. So that's obviously where the shaman is spending most of their time. And then you have the room of the body and behavior, which is that's where you're physically healing the body, and then you're working the body through rite and ritual. I'm just using the existing integral 4 quadrants, and I'm finding the shamanic functions in the 4 quadrants. That's what I'm doing here. And then you have the room or the quadrant of structure, institutions, and lineages. So, for example, let's give an example of where does the shaman interface with institutions? Well, if you take our society, the American society, as an example, because it's very recent, we can kind of look at it. The Masons, the founding fathers were Masons, and some of them Kabbalists, and they were relating to and in a culture where the shamanic function was powerful, was moving. And so the Constitution and the founding documents and founding principles of America are rooted in the spiritual. They're rooted in the shamanic. They're rooted in esoteric, hermetic philosophy and ideas. So the shaman is not at the front end, at the political end, but they're in the back end. They're in the Masonic lodges at the time. Now you're not gonna find too much, as much depth in there now. And who knows what else you're going to find in there. But so that's where the shamanic functions integrate with the 4 quadrants, and that kind of fills things out. Now, the root of it all, the source of all this, of any shaman, is their own, what Camargo used the term, twice-born initiation. The shaman is themselves initiated through life, through life. Not just they trained by their master. They're not just trained and here's the practices and all that. That's where it loses its depth. And so, but the shaman is the true shaman is initiated through life, initiated through their own dark night of the soul, or multiple dark nights of the soul, their own near-death experiences, their own awakening process. And maybe it's to go down, or maybe it's to go up into the transcendent, but then have to suffer on the way back down, integrating into the world. Whether you go down and come back up, or you go up and come back down, you're going to suffer. You're going to be alienated in Edinger's understanding. If you look at the ego-self axis in Jungian psychology, you're doing well, and then you're crashing. You're down at the bottom. You're alienated. And however you become alienated, however you become crashed out, and then you have to shed your ego skin, and then you have to go rebuild yourself and come back into life, renewed, then that is twice born. That is a true initiation. And so a person who has been twice born by life itself can now go back into the world and bring something of the wisdom, of the gnosis, something that came out of the shadow, out of the dark, or out of another dimension, and give it to the world in some way. And those ways that I was describing to you, those are the ways that the shaman proper does that. And I'll say it again. So it's healing, initiating, revealing, mediating, sacralizing, innovating, and mythologizing. But now, though, where we are at, because when we talk about shaman, and we're talking about the very ancient people who still, those old ways still exist. But that's a very ancient mode where all of those modes and functions are in one person, or in a small group of people. And now it's because everything has been atomized and everything is broken off into specialties and all of this. So now we have these roles in different people. And not only that, but we have secularized versions of these roles. So you still have the shamanic so when you take somebody who doesn't do all the 7 things, let's say, that shaman do, but they just do 1 or 2 of those things, they still are still under this umbrella in what I'm putting the qualifier sacred onto it. So you would have the sacred healer, the sacred revealer, the sacred initiator, or whatever words you're going to use, the sacred artist. And so that is the person who does some shamanic functions and does them through the experience, the wisdom that came through their own twice-born initiation. So that's kind of the world we're in now. There's not as many people who put all of these functions together in the traditional shaman compound structure. But that doesn't matter. We have them spread out. What matters more is that the people who are serving these functions are actually twice born. They're actually qualified. And, I mean, maybe I shouldn't even say that. Maybe I should say because there's a role for the secularized person, right? For a surgeon. A surgeon doesn't have to be a spiritual shamanic practitioner. They can just be really good at their job, right? So we have use for the secularized versions of these original functions. Obviously, the priest, what use are they if they're not channeling the sacred? The psychologist, I would say, what use are they if they're not channeling the sacred? Not much. Maybe some. Yeah. Okay. I guess there's a use. I guess I won't shut out all the secularized versions, but you can see where the problem is. So anyway, so the root of the shamanic function, whether it's through the shaman proper or whether it's through a specialist, a sacred specialist, the root is their own twice-born initiation, their own dark night of the soul, their own journey into the transcendent, out of this world, and then suffer the rebirth process. So, the sacred artist now. So the sacred artist is one of these specialists, and the sacred artist is the shaman of the room or quadrant of shared meaning. They're the ones who are working with the culture mind, right? Like I was talking about. Art is the carrier of the culture mind, the way one psyche reaches another. It manifests in two forms: symbolic communication and psychic catharsis. That's the collective and the personal. That's both. And then I have that note to myself about mirroring, showing people who they are. It's like you see art, you see some meme, on Twitter or whatever, and it doesn't even have to be deep. It just, boom, look at this. Look at some aspect of humanity. Look at you. And so it's a type of mirroring. Let me read my notes also. Art works first in the space between minds, turning private experience into a shared symbol others can enter. That's not good. That needs to be rewritten. So its calling is social first. Okay, let's just move on from that. That's not developed. I had to put these quick notes together before I got on here because I didn't want to dig into the deeper paper that's still in construction. And then, so that's okay, let me make sure that that's clear. That's the sacred artist. I think I've explained that. It's the artist who's doing art in whatever form, but it's coming from their own initiation. And then the examples that I have to share are the examples that I have from myself, from my own life. Now, I have actually an album for my metal band, Vile. There's an album called Metamorphosis, and it is got all the lyrics. I wrote all the lyrics and everything on that particular album, and they were all based on my own dark night of the soul and my own red pill awakening and all of that. So, which is like a double initiation that I had to go through. And that's all in there. So that was one form of art, one form of sacred art. But then when I got with Melissa and we started putting together the O1 experience and living in the movie and shadow tech and all of that, that's our form of sacred art, and I continue to do it today with that material. So And then I have a note in here, and the way I explained things was very general. And if you look at Andrew Camargo's paper with the 25 different types of shaman, it's very easy to go in there and go, oh yeah, that one's me, that's me. And then try to wear that costume. That's your persona. This is who I am now. I'm the the sacred myth maker or whatever. And then, it's like there was this, I was over at Casa de Luz, and there was this woman that was introducing herself in this room, and she's like, I don't remember what her name was, but like, hi, I'm Judy. I'm the resident shaman around here. And I'm like, okay. Oh God, one of these. You're the resident shaman. Okay, right. And so that is a person who is wearing the shaman as a mask, as a persona. And of course there's some experience and there's some wisdom and everything that's in her, because otherwise she wouldn't have even thought to even try that. But not enough to realize that whole presentation is persona. So that kind of just tips you off to where that person's at, and you're like, okay. But that's kind of the pitfall there, with you start finding out, putting names to these types of sacred artists or sacred roles, shamanic roles, and then saying, oh yeah, that one's me. That's what I'm going to call myself. I'm going to put that name on my Facebook profile. I'm going to call myself. Like me and Melissa both used to say on our Facebook pages, I don't even know what's on Instagram, but on the Facebook pages, it's artist alchemist. And it's like, okay, it's a title, but you don't really know what it means. You don't know what artist, you do know what artist means, and that's fine, and it's very general. Alchemist, you don't really know what that means until somebody tells you, and probably different people are going to explain it differently. And I mean, I'm using a very Jungian and I would say classical understanding of the spiritual or esoteric alchemist. But most people don't know that. And so who knows what they think. So I have some kind of, persona mask or whatever, but I don't get confused that that's me. So there you go, folks. And so that was kind of there you go. So you got the background kind of behind this. You got this kind of a rundown of the compound function of the shaman. You got a definition of the artist, a technician of the culture mind, and then you got the sacred versions of these things. You have the breakout of the different roles, both secular and sacred. And then you have my personal life art with Melissa, living in the movie and life art and all that stuff, shadow tech and all that. So that's kind of now the intent of all of this, and when I talk to you guys on YouTube here, a lot of times I'm just working through stuff. So talking to you about this is a way that I work through this material. But, the idea here is that when this particular paper is done, a person who is on a path, on one of these paths, will be able to look at this and they'll be able to say, oh, okay, that's where I am and that's what I'm doing and that's where this comes from and that's what the function is. So they'll be able to place themselves, because this society doesn't have a known place for people who are sacred artists or sacred healers or some part of the shaman family. They don't know. Nobody talks about it. Nobody knows. And then they feel alienated from society. And people who have had dark nights of the soul, they don't know that can be an initiation into a higher spiritual mode of being. They don't know that. And so, or a lot of people just, they come back and they don't know what to do. So this is what the purpose of this is, to on one hand, it was to define some of this terminology for myself, but it was also to be an orienting structure for people who are on this path in general, and so that they can see where they're at and what this is all about. Okay, that's good for now. Is there anything else in here? No, there's not. Let me turn that off, and let me go to your comments, everyone. Thanks for hanging out and for talking and for commenting, and let's see what you guys have been saying and go that direction. And hello and hi to Camille, and thank you, Camille, for saying it was awesome. I was just improvising, as you know, and peace kittens. Amber says, gives me a peace kittens. Okay, I like peace kittens. I love kittens. I like cats, kitties, and peace is very good. Dana says the music and imagery in that video was incredible and awesome. Yes, thank you. Dana, you have to try to send me your music again through shadowtechalchemy@gmail.com. I know it works. That video was, like I said, that was the demo version for the song Prima Materia. And those images that you saw when we played live, okay, first of all, we had a whole set. It was about an hour long, like 50 something minutes. And I took about a year, and I went to there's a website called deviantart.com. It's an amazing website where amazing artists have always posted their stuff, and they have their own accounts and everything. A lot of deep artists on there. And I started going on there and searching and finding fantastic deep artists, painters and different kinds of artists, mainly painters. And then I would find art that went along with the subject matter of our songs. And then I would contact them and say, do you mind if we use your art in our live performances? And I got a bunch of them, 20 of them or something, to say yes. And then I would take their art off the website and I would put it into a video editor. And then I would line it up with our music, because our drummer played to a click track, so it was always the same tempo, or it could be synced to a movie. And then I made slideshows, like you just saw. The video that's if you didn't see it at the beginning, or if you came in late, you can watch this. There's like a little 1 minute little thing of Melissa dancing, and then there's this video called Prima Materia, song and video. And that's all the art that I used from some of these artists. And then there's some personal stuff in there that's from Melissa's history and stuff. But we created that art, and then we would just kind of it would just be a slideshow, and it would just slide into one image or another. And it would go along with the lyrics. And so that was a very simple but elegant and deep kind of presentation that I projected onto the wall in the venues, or on a projection screen. Or we had another rig that was like a 55-inch television with a frame around it that our friend Leanne, she's an amazing artist, and she painted the whole kind of frame around it and stuff. And so we had something to project that onto when we played. Unfortunately, when our band came out, COVID hit right after that. And so that really screwed us up. But, let's see what else. Dana is saying, interesting, they called it that. I don't know what that one was. The whole twin flame. Camille says the whole twin flame label thing bothers me. I guess probably because in my experience, I've only heard the term used by toxic people. Well, I didn't know that much about the twin flame thing, other than Melissa and I. We had this Shadow Tech Process group on Facebook. It was like a private group for people that had been to our online workshops. And there were two ladies in there that were part of the, considered themselves in the twin flame community, and they both kind of blew up and went crazy. They're like borderlines, and like, wow. That was my only experience with twin flame people. And then Stephanie explained it to me. In fact, I talked to her last night, and she explained, really in depth, like what is the kind of in that community, what is the myth and philosophy and all of that around that whole thing. And it's basically very similar to the way I explain what Melissa and I did as the alchemical relationship. But the difference is that the twin flames have something about them. And the way Stephanie explained this to me, it does appear to be an archetype. And Camille, it kind of does fit what you had going on there. And because it's a very powerful relationship, but it's one that wants to have conflict. It wants to break up, and it's like they pull apart, they come back. There's something very powerful about it. There's anima, animus projection going on, and all that happens in powerful relationships. But there's some reason why the relationship can't click, why they can't live together, or why there's something that's kind of blocking integration. That's the way she explained it to me. And so I can see that. It's a certain kind of an archetype. They can, now in Stephanie's case, what she did with her partner was very hot and fiery, but wasn't toxic. There was some level of that, but not extremely toxic. But there were reasons why the relationship couldn't turn into a true relationship. What I had with Melissa was different than that. Sure, we had fights and we had things that we had to, conflicts, of course, like in all relationships. But ours was very tight, very creative, very numinous, very prolific, and very loving and very connected and lots of integration and bonding and it was very healthy. We had a very healthy relationship, me and Melissa, and a very high level one. So there's some relationship to the twin flame thing, but it's sort of like the healthy version of that kind of. Let's see, where are we? What did I read already? Oh yeah, Zaralath. Yeah, what's up, brother? Bedtime lurk. Yeah, how you been doing? Bedtime? Is it bedtime? Yeah, you might be on. Are you on a later time zone than me? Yeah, welcome in, and you're free to lurk. A friend of mine from school started a Reiki practice. She does energy healing. She's the only one I personally know who I really consider a working shamanic artist doing it for a living. Right. The qualifier in my book, like I was just telling you earlier, is not whether you do it for a living. The qualifier is whether or not you're twice born. That's the qualifier. Did you go to the other side? Did you go to the other side and come back and then have to integrate that trip? Or did you go to hell and come back and then have to integrate that and use what you learned from your trip in your life in some way and use it to help other people? And so for it to be, because otherwise it's a version that's desacralized, right? And I'm not saying her, but I don't know what her situation is. But you can have people who are all the way on the far end of faking it, and then to all the way on the other end of completely the real deal, as deep as it could possibly be. And so, so the qualifier is not whether or not they're making a living at it. In fact, it's I don't think it's even related to that. But hi Sarah. Hi Theo, how you doing? Wounded healer. Yes, a wounded healer is one form of one category, one way of dying and being reborn, and then turning it into some kind of a taking the boon and giving it back to your culture, to your tribe, in Joseph Campbell's terms. And Sarah says, that's why I like simple names, simple, normal titles, something people can relate to easily. Yes, I agree. These people, New Age people and stuff, just go crazy with the persona side of this, and that's a big tell. Seems rather silly to have some title for yourself that people will just be intimidated by or not be able to relate to you. Yeah, but I mean, I agree with that, but they're using it to be attractive, to be shiny. Dana says, I like how you said we've all lived or experienced at least one, but probably several of the 7 types at one point in our lives. No, what I was saying, the 7 types are the 7 functions. Let me go back to it here to be clear about this. Healing, initiating, revealing, mediating, sacralizing, innovating, and mythologizing. Those are the 7 functions, in the way I'm explaining it, of a shaman proper. But all people, all human beings, are doing one or more of those in their lives. Doesn't make them a shaman proper, but they're doing some kind of healing, some kind of revealing, they're not all doing all of them. We don't all do all of those. We touch those to some degree or whatever, but we're not really engaged in them all. We're engaged in a few of them. And then we don't all approach them through the qualifier of sacred. We don't all heal or mythologize or mediate from a personal experience of twice-born initiation, right? And we don't all do that. So, but these are all human functions, and then we all together, collectively, we do all of them. And we do them in varying degrees of depth and of spiritual depth. So, but I did say that we all are at least somewhat initiated into the other side. We at least touch the other side, whether it's a peak experience that takes us what we would consider to be up. It's not really up, but we could think about it that way. Or dark nights where we're down, right? Where we all have some kind of connection to that. But there is a threshold of depth that, most people kind of touch down into the underworld to some degree, or touch into the upper world, so to speak, to some degree, but they don't necessarily cross over the level of height or depth that it takes to call it a twice-born initiation. That is a near-death experience, right? A near death, and it doesn't necessarily mean death of the body, but it means death of everything that you knew to be real, and your persona, and your place in the world, and getting flooded in with all kinds of unconscious material, and then having to get back out of it and get back into life again, and then integrate that and go, what does this mean? What did I learn? How did I rebuild myself? And then what am I now that I'm on the other side of this? It means rebuilding yourself back again. And when you rebuild yourself, you're functioning at a higher degree of depth, of fidelity. You're a more developed person because of that death and rebirth. That is what that's what qualifies someone in my book to be considered, I'm calling it the sacred this or the sacred that. But everyone has a little bit of that. They may not have had that kind of an initiation, but they have some touch with that. So every artist, every healer, every psychologist, every storyteller has some kind of access, but we wouldn't put them under the shamanic umbrella unless they've been seriously initiated and learn to be able to integrate that and go and then help other people with that. Yes, you're welcome for clarifying that. Yeah, so there you go, folks. Now, if anybody wants to go in any direction, because we still have another half hour to go tonight, if anybody wants to go in any direction, just let me know and we'll go in that direction. So yeah, so this is, it's like now that, when I was with Melissa, it was all, we were doing, okay, so let me actually say something about that, about Melissa. Melissa was always the sacred artist. She was the initiated sacred artist. And then when she got with me, then she started picking up more of those roles. And now that I've kind of, had all this time and this experience with somebody who was just absolutely the archetypal sacred artist. Shamanic artist is another way of saying it, and truly initiated, truly twice born, thrice born. In fact, she would say, she said sort of infamously that she was felt like a cat with 9 lives, and that her life that she had with me was the 9th one, which it was. So she kind of considered herself to be, this was kind of a guess, but initiated into a near-death experience, up to 9 times. So, and she was, and that's what she did. She took that stuff and then she put that into her art. She put that into her performance. That's why she was so deep. When you see Melissa perform, when you listen to her and when you read her lyrics and you see her perform, you're like, that's the deepest artist, And so to be around that person for all that time, to live with that person and to be, totally integrated with that person, and then studying her and how all this works and everything. Now I'm like, okay, now I can kind of see the field. I can see the field now. And then I have Mikal, I have C. Michael Smith, our friend, who is a PhD Jungian and trained as an actual shaman in South America, and he integrates those together, and he's got knowledge of all the spiritual traditions, and he's older than us, and And so he's somebody who's so deep into understanding the shamanic container, the traditional shamanic container, that I can talk to him and stuff, and I can kind of see what is this. So now I'm like, okay, I can see this field, and now that Melissa's not here, it's like I was in that relational container, and everything that was going on with me in my life was basically priority number one is what we were doing together. And then the next priority was whatever we were doing for the community. And now that the container's gone, now I can kind of open up and be like, okay, what is this? What did I learn? What is my view? And it's kind of like one of my talents is to be able to see things and form maps, like meta maps of things. And I've done this with all kinds of different subjects. But so now I'm kind of doing that with this, and now I can kind of see this thing to some degree. And then I can go look at the world, and I can go look at the people in the world and I can go, oh, okay, you're in there, you're in there, you're in there. The people who are on this show, they're in there, right? So now it's my job to basically, give you guys feedback, you and anyone else that comes in front of my path, to give you feedback and say, oh, look, you know what you are? You're one of these. You're over here. You didn't know where you were, what you were, and what you were doing. I'm going to tell you, you're right here. You're somewhere in there. Can't tell you exactly what your deal is, but you're somewhere in this, under this umbrella. And because this umbrella, this shamanic mystic umbrella is not known to the greater society, then people are just like, what am I doing here? So that's kind of one of my big jobs right now, is to help people see if they're in this category, and then to mirror them in their process and give them feedback, and to whatever feedback's necessary and mirroring is necessary, so that they can use and put to use what's come out of their life experience. And it's also important to note right now, and we're alluding to it, that there are different, if you're a sacred artist, let's say, or a healer or whatever, there's different levels of it and different modes of it and all of that. And it's not necessary to be like Melissa. It's not necessary. I know certain people who have just been to the absolute bottom. And just because they've been to the absolute bottom doesn't make them the better shaman or shamaness or sacred this or that. Because if you got hurt that bad, it's often very hard to actually put yourself back together enough to where you can be of use to people. So it's rare when you have people that have gone all the way down and then come back, or gone down many, many times and come back and put themselves together into a way that's useful to the world, and that's where they are satisfied with themselves and healthy in themselves and useful to the world. It's more common that people will have had some touch with these downswings, or in some cases, less likely, but in some cases, these higher peak experiences. And they've had one or two of these that were significant and that did change their life and did cause ego death. and did hurt them, but it's recoverable. And then they can turn that into some kind of a sacred duty. So just because you haven't, been to the absolute bottom, doesn't mean that you're not on this path. Or just because you haven't, had non-dual experiences. Melissa had both. She'd been to the top and the bottom. She's a very rare human being. And then she had a natural kind of creative genius that was also very rare. And then she's able to put these experiences into her art. And so that you get this. Now, a lot of people that have those kinds of powers, those artists, and they are some of the greatest artists. And there's a lot more of them that you don't know than the ones you do know. A lot of them die young. There's this thing called the 27 Club, or whatever. They die young, or they have very difficult lives. So depth and intensity are gifts, and they're also it's also a curse or fate. Dana says, down to the deepest depths and the highest highs several times. Right? Okay. Right. Yeah. Well, and I'm now get to sort out and now I get to sort of counsel. Oh yeah, right. Because as some kind of a, remember, I can't understand the title. It's like you're a peer something of who have similar experiences who are struggling. Right. Yes. That's good. So you're doing it right now. That's exact. So you're doing it. So now you're doing it. Dana, you've been to the bottom. You've been to the top. You've been to the bottom. And now you're working with people personally who have also hit rock bottom or grew up around rock bottom, and now you can support them and give them feedback and give them counsel and perspective, peer support specialist. Yes, and so the add-on here is that the way that would work in the professional world in the modern West, especially in America, is that role would have been desacralized to some degree, and often very much. If you go to something like AA, they're not desacralized there. They've kind of brought it down. It's not a full Christian thing or spiritual thing or Hindu thing. Actually, like I told you last week, AA was formed out of, it's very closely linked to Carl Jung and Jungian psychology, but it's sort of a mix between Christian and Jungian viewpoints. But they've kind of pulled a lot of that off so that anyone can join without feeling that they have to follow some particular system or belief. So in that system, there's the sacred is still there, the spiritual is still there, and different groups are going to have it to varying degrees, but at least it's there. Now, if you go into the professional world of psychiatry, of psychology, of social work, and all of that, then you're going to get, it's going to be more, the institution is going to be more, what do we call that? It's going to be desacralized. It's going to be secularized. But you as an individual can bring spirituality into it to whatever degree you want. And I guess there's probably some boundary on that. Like if you're an actual, like a doctor or psychiatrist or whatever, they're, generally pretty secular and atheistic even. So now it's up to the individual to sacralize their practice, their peer support. You sacralize your peer support. She says, I encourage people to connect with their spirituality as one of the main pillars of wellness. Right, there you go. Exactly. So, like in the like we were talking about last week with the Jungian thing, is that I told the story of how the original guy that Bill W. was influenced by was a patient of Carl Jung's, and he was alcoholic. And Jung basically said to him, look, you're pretty far off the deep end here, and you keep falling off the wagon, and it's been going on for a long time and everything, and you're pretty severe here. He said, the only thing I think might be able to heal you is God, is some kind of a religious transformation. And so this guy started going to church, and he joined this group, this Oxford group, and I don't know the details of what that thing was, but it's some kind of a Christian group. And he actually had a numinous, download from God, so to speak, and it healed him of his alcoholism. And that testimony was given to Bill W., and that was part of Bill W.'s original kind of realization that went into AA. And so, and the Jungians always recognize, the true Jungians, the deeper Jungians, recognize that addiction is, or this was Carl Jung's thought at least, it is an attempt to sacralize your life. It is an attempt to connect to the transcendent. It's even called spirits when you're drinking spirits. It's an attempt to get the ego, the conscious mind, to have a relationship with the unconscious and with the dimension of the sacred. And so if you can get that outside of alcohol or drugs, then you won't need the drugs or the alcohol anymore. Now, there's other complexes that can get involved too. You can have other destructive complexes that need to cope, and they're using the drugs or the alcohol as a soothing mechanism, and it's a biochemical soothing. So I think it's more than just the spiritual, but I think that is probably the core of it. And so when it comes to healing, if you take this route, it's really mandatory. And the deeper that you as a healer, or anyone that's hearing this, the deeper they are as a healer, the more the prescription for the patient has to be to deepen their spirituality. And you have to understand what that means. How is that done? You have to be living the most sacred, spiritual, connected life that you can, so that you know what that is. And so then you can influence that person. So that's kind of that's the practitioner side of it. The practitioner has just as much work to do as the patient, right? They're not, hanging on to the ledge. The practitioner has been hanging on the ledge before, but they've climbed up and they're safe up above. But they still have to integrate all of that, and they have to continue to develop themselves and continue to heal themselves and become whole in themselves. She says, I ask people to check in or how they're doing with their PI, physical, intellectual, emotional, and spiritual. Okay, right. Good. Yeah. You're going to have to customize this. I mean, I can just see how, like, what would I do if I were to take a job like that and be doing all of that? I would be way off script. I would take all the recommendations of the practice, and I would use them, but I would go way off script. I would turn one of those practices into my own form of life art. That's why they probably wouldn't like me. So okay. So does anybody else want to say anything? Does anybody else need any feedback? Because we're getting close to 10 on my end, and I'm gonna go cook dinner. But yeah, so anyway, I hope that was helpful to you guys. And when this paper comes out, you'll get to download it. And if you ever want to download the other papers that I've been writing over the last several months, they're on the shadowtechalchemy.com website under the papers link. And I'm working on I'm going to develop some workshops that I'm going to be giving here in Austin. I did my first one already, and so those will keep going. I got to kind of figure out how to kind of do that with this place. And yeah, that's what's going on. And I got Melissa's movie is still in the hopper. It's still out there, and I've gotten a few small awards for it from film festivals. I'll release it into this year, beginning of next year, I'll probably release it on her death anniversary, her 2-year death anniversary, which will be January 5th. That's what I'm thinking. I'll probably release it. But anybody that wants to see it in advance, just let me know, and I'll turn you on to the link. And then I'm going to work on a couple other movies about Melissa. One just about her music, just about her as a performer. And then another one that's about both of us, actually, about the work we were doing together. So, because all that was discussed in the last movie, but the last movie was more like I showed a lot of elements of Melissa and our life together, and then her illness and all the things we did, and then I had a retrospective and interviews with friends and family members, and so it was a lot of stuff in 100-minute long film. Kind of told her whole story. And this next one, there's gonna be one about her as an artist, as a badass musician that I can just float to people who want to see a movie about an artist. And then one about the spiritual work that we did, and like what we did, and more about our practice and how we lived. Some of that was in the other movie, but more on that. So that's coming out. And so yeah, so there we go. And what else can I say? I'm just gonna kind of hang on with you guys till we get to 10. And if anybody wants, let me see, what else can I give you for references and material? Go to shadowtechalchemy.com, go to the articles page, and there is a shadow work reading list on there. So that's good. That's helpful. There's a lot of videos on YouTube. On this YouTube channel, there's a lot of videos. Just all the live shows. There's lots of videos. There's, whatever it is. But, my job, I want to be a provider for you guys. And that's my job. It's like I've been saying, is to help orient you, but also to give you specific feedback and mirroring, and to encourage you to deepen your practice and deepen your studies. And if you're going in a certain direction, let me know, and I can give you some feedback and some resources. And I want you guys to be able, if you're on this path, which you are, you wouldn't be here if you weren't. I want you to be able to grow into your highest potential on this path, into a royal, right? Into an actual shaman, or into a sacred specialist of some kind, a sacred healer, a sacred storyteller, a sacred artist of some kind, who is using your initiation, your experience, and your wisdom that you're getting from not only your original experience, but from your ongoing practice and ongoing depth work that you're doing, and your alchemical relationships that you're having, and then to use that socially with other people. And to do it in a way that's very genuine and very human, and not like some, we're not doing some fancy kind of LA version of shamanism. We're not doing that at all, right? We're doing this in a very modern, very 21st century, but also very, very traditional way of doing this, the original way it was always done. So what you're doing now, Dana says what she's doing right now feels like life art. Thank you for the nice talk. You're very welcome, and thank you for hanging out and for your input, Dana. Yeah, if you take what you're doing in life and you artify it, if you use the artist's lens to look at what you're doing and look at how you approach things, and if you study deep artists and you listen to deep artists and how they work, if you listen to David Lynch interviews, if you listen to interviews with Joni Mitchell, if you listen to interviews with whoever, Rick Rubin, whoever, deep artists, and then you can kind of go, yeah, that's the artist lens. That's the artist lens. Or whoever, David Bowie, whoever, Grace Jones, whoever. Not the most, mainstream interviews, the deeper ones, the older ones probably. But put on that artist lens where, everything is being mediated, or everything is being, that you're in conscious relationship with the medium, you're in conscious relationship with the message, and you're allowing the unconscious to churn and gestate and to keep modifying the creative material that's coming out of you. And it's a combination of working with the conscious mind that's saying, this is how to organize things, and the unconscious mind that's saying, this is the substance, this is the spirit of what it is. And you're listening to the unconscious, and you're looking at your dreams, listening to your intuition, following the synchronicities that are showing up as validation. This is using the artist's lens. And when you're doing this and applying this onto whatever you're doing and wherever your focus in life is, then you're a life artist. And then you just kind of keep applying that to everything. You can apply it to your relationships. The more you can understand the way the artiste lives, thinks, works, creates, the kinds of environments that they have to be in to create, the kind of space that they need to be able to create, the kind of communication they need with themselves to be able to create. The more you understand the mode of the artist, or the deep artist, the artiste, then you can start applying that in your life and onto everything you do. Raising children. What's better for children than to raise children as an art form, right? So now some people do this unconsciously. They are still life artists. They're not sacred life artists. The sacred life artist is conscious that they're making art out of their life, and that they actually, you can still be doing it without the spiritual part. But generally, the deeper you go into the field of art, and the deeper you go, well, then you're just in the spiritual, because you're interfacing with the unconscious. So all artists are doing that, but the deeper you go, then the more it becomes a sacred practice. So there we go, folks. We had a good talk tonight. And if anybody came in late, you can go back and listen. And we'll be back next Tuesday. And you all are always free to contact me if you want to go in a certain direction. But otherwise, I will continue to dig into all of the, I've probably in all the broadcasts that I've done already, I've probably kind of gone around the whole field that I'm competent in, and shared all that material probably in one way or another, probably a couple, 3 times by now, because I think we've been doing this, we've been doing this once a week since the beginning of the year. Started at the very beginning of the year. So we've got 20, we got probably like 30 shows. And out of those 30 shows, I've probably talked about a lot of the same subjects, but that doesn't matter, because it's like it keeps getting deeper. We keep working around things. We keep pulling up stones and looking under them, and you guys get involved in the comments. Sometimes folks call in and we get to explore together. And then I'm always involved in my own process and deepening things, and so I'm always coming back around and adding layers of it. And it's always a challenge, every week for me to come on here, take a subject and break it apart and try to be at least somewhat interesting or entertaining and educational. And so we just keep doing that. And you guys can steer me, direct me in any way that you want to, because I'm doing this for you. So there we go, shadowtechalchemy.com. And everybody have a great week. And thanks for being here, and I will see you next week.